Dubai's exploitation of Africa's gold, unveiling the collaborative heist. The exploitation of Africa's gold by Dubai reveals a complex web of actors orchestrating this masterminded heist. Contrary to a singular nation's involvement, the reality of this plunder was starkly exposed in 2022 when a staggering 435 tons of gold were smuggled out of Africa, equivalent to more than 1 ton daily. In a disturbing revelation, it became evident that multiple nations had joined forces to siphon Africa's gold reserves, leaving the continent mired in economic instability while they amassed riches. Exploiting Africa's vast natural resources without reciprocation has been an enduring narrative from the era of colonization to the current age of globalization. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, epitomized by its opulent skyscrapers and lavish lifestyle, now occupies a pivotal role in this long-standing saga of illegal gold trade. Shockingly, in 2022, a staggering 93% of illicit gold entering the UAE was traced back to Africa, amounting to 435 tons, valued at a colossal $35 billion. This wealth constitutes 40% of Africa's total gold production and 12% of the global output, extracted with ruthless precision. However, this narrative transcends individual greed. The West, renowned for its historical exploitation of African resources, silently collaborates in this grand theft, reaping benefits from the looted gold flowing through Dubai's channels. The cycle of exploitation persists, with Africa's wealth enriching distant lands while leaving the continent bereft of its own treasures. The true nature of Africa's economic struggles becomes apparent when one delves into the continent's wealth paradox. Have you ever pondered why, despite Africa's abundant resources, a large portion of its population grapples with poverty? The root cause lies in the systematic exploitation of Africa's resources by external forces, a modern-day extension of the colonial legacy that has haunted the continent for generations. The contemporary expression of this exploitation manifests in the illicit gold trade, prominently featuring the United Arab Emirates, UAE. In the year 2022, close to half of Africa's gold was illicitly siphoned out of the continent, with Dubai acting as the primary conduit to global markets. The UAE's pivotal role in this illicit trade cannot be overstated. While Dubai boasts the moniker City of Gold and attracts traders and investors worldwide, beneath its shimmering facade lurks a realm rife with corruption, smuggling, and exploitation. The gold reaching Dubai often originates from mines in Africa, operated under hazardous and unethical conditions, evading regulations and taxes that could benefit the continent. This issue transcends mere legality, delving deep into a moral quagmire that underscores the enduring disparities between Africa and the global community. However, it's crucial to clarify that the culpability extends beyond the UAE alone. The Western world, though operating discreetly, holds a pivotal role in this cycle of exploitation. Once the gold arrives in Dubai, it doesn't linger there, it finds its way to Western markets, where it becomes a catalyst for economic growth and enriches multinational corporations. Predominantly based in Europe and North America, these corporations stand as the primary beneficiaries of this ill-gotten wealth. They acquire the gold, often disregarding its provenance, and turn substantial profits upon resale. Nations that tout human rights and transparency as core values are paradoxically complicit in a system that exploits Africa's resources and populace. The process is deceptively straightforward. Gold is extracted from African mines, frequently through small-scale artisanal operations. Instead of undergoing legitimate processing and sale, a significant portion is smuggled out, sidestepping taxes and regulations. The gold traverses various hands, frequently culminating in Dubai, where lenient regulations facilitate its laundering and subsequent global market sale. The financial gains are staggering, yet Africa reaps no benefits. Instead, the continent grapples with environmental degradation, social fragmentation, and economic destitution resulting from this illicit commerce. In essence, if Africa isn't reaping the rewards of its gold, then who is? The answer is multifaceted. At the heart of this intricate network lies the UAE, notably Dubai, which has evolved into a worldwide gold trading hub. Nevertheless, the profiteering extends beyond Dubai. Western nations and corporations emerge as the ultimate beneficiaries, purchasing this gold with minimal scrutiny regarding its origins or ethical implications. Dubai's pivotal role as an intermediary cannot be understated. Acting as a marketplace where illicit gold finds buyers, the city serves as a conduit for channeling wealth from Africa to the Western world. The opulent skyscrapers and lavish lifestyles that define Dubai are, to a degree, sustained by the suffering and exploitation of African miners. However, this narrative transcends mere financial gain. It is fundamentally about power dynamics. By dictating the flow of gold, the West and its allies assert control over global markets, perpetuating Africa's reliance on selling its resources at undervalued rates, while others reap the benefits. The Western financial framework is deeply enmeshed in this exploitative system. Banks and financial entities, predominantly situated in Europe and North America, provide the necessary infrastructure for trading this gold on a global scale. Profiting from these transactions, these institutions turn a blind eye to the human toll, safeguarding the interests of the influential and ensuring that Africa's gold-generated wealth remains distant from the continent. Yet, the exploitation doesn't cease with financial bodies. The gold that ultimately reaches Western markets finds applications in various industries, spanning from electronics to jewelry. Multinational corporations, driven by consumer demand, often overlook the origins of their sourced materials, perpetuating a cycle of ignorance and complicity in the exploitation of Africa's resources. The unimpeded flow of gold shields them from posing challenging inquiries. Consequently, a global supply chain tainted by corruption and exploitation persists under the facade of legitimacy. The involvement of Western governments in this intricate web cannot be disregarded. Despite advocating for democratic values and human rights, these governments are complicit in Africa's resource exploitation. Through trade pacts, foreign aid, and diplomatic ties, they cultivate an environment that nurtures the flourishing of this illicit trade. They establish the legal and economic frameworks that empower corporations to extract wealth from Africa without reciprocating fairly. The earnings reaped from Africa's gold trade are monumental, yet they gravitate towards a select few. This wealth could potentially elevate millions out of poverty, construct educational institutions and healthcare facilities, and foster the continent's future. Instead, it funnels into foreign banks and corporations, leaving Africa grappling with environmental degradation, societal discord, and economic disparities, the authentic toll of this global plunder. How has the exploitation of Africa's gold persisted unchecked for so long? The answer lies in the intricate blend of political, economic, and legal systems meticulously devised to safeguard the interests of the influential. The Western world, with its deep-rooted history of colonialism and economic supremacy, has played a pivotal role in designing and upholding these structures. The challenge of legal structures emerges as a primary concern. Numerous African nations possess laws and protocols aimed at safeguarding their resources, yet these are frequently subverted by external influences, primarily through international trade agreements often orchestrated by Western powers. These agreements commonly contain provisions that advantage multinational corporations at the expense of African states. Consequently, African nations find it arduous to manage their resources, compelling them to vend their gold at prices dictated by the global market, where Western interests wield significant control. The sway of multinational corporations cannot be understated. Armed with substantial resources and a global footprint, these entities wield authority in shaping economic policies to their benefit. They exert pressure on governments, both domestically in Africa and abroad, to establish favorable conditions for their activities. This often involves diluting environmental regulations, lowering taxes, and stifling labor rights, all in pursuit of maximizing profits. The outcome is a system where the wealth generated by Africa's gold flows out of the continent, while the local populace bears the brunt of the associated costs. Furthermore, political influence presents another layer of complexity. Western nations have a lengthy history of intervening in African political affairs, bolstering regimes that align with their interests while undermining those that do not. This meddling in governance ensures that African administrations stay reliant on foreign aid and investments, hindering their ability to take a firm stance against the exploitation of their resources. The West leverages its economic and political influence to maintain Africa's state of dependence, guaranteeing the uninterrupted flow of gold and other resources. This political sway is commonly exerted through diplomatic channels and international bodies. Western nations, utilizing entities like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, impose economic directives on African nations that prioritize the interests of foreign investors over the welfare of local populations. Disguised as economic overhauls, these policies actually serve as instruments of economic domination, engineered to ensure that Africa's wealth continues streaming towards the West. Lastly, there's the issue of information manipulation. Western media frequently portrays Africa as a continent riddled with corruption and strife, disregarding the role of foreign entities in perpetuating these issues. This narrative serves to rationalize the exploitation of Africa's resources, presenting it as a necessary component in a region deemed incapable of self-governance. The truth is that Africa's challenges often stem from external interventions rather than internal shortcomings. The depiction of Africa by the media as a realm of turmoil and disarray serves to veil the deeper realities regarding the continent's exploitation. By concentrating on the symptoms, poverty, corruption, and conflict, Western narratives conveniently evade the root causes, frequently entrenched within the power structures established and sustained by the West. This narrative manipulation aids in upholding the existing order, ensuring that the global audience remains largely unaware of the full extent of Africa's exploitation and the involvement of Western powers in this continual plunder. To summarize, the mechanism enabling the exploitation of Africa's gold is not a random historical occurrence, but a purposefully crafted system that advantages the mighty while disadvantaging the vulnerable. It is a system erected on the foundations of legal manipulation, economic supremacy, political meddling, and media influence. These components collaborate to guarantee that Africa persists as a reservoir of inexpensive resources for the world, with the continent itself left to grapple with the aftermath. Now the query arises: what transpires when a continent's riches are systematically siphoned away? The repercussions on Africa and its populace are profound and varied, impacting every facet of life across the continent. The illicit gold trade not only strips Africa of its riches, but also intensifies poverty, stokes conflicts, and ravages the environment. The West's unquenchable thirst for gold is exacting a toll on lives in Africa, and the repercussions of this exploitation are extensive. Among these consequences, the environmental fallout stands out as perhaps the most conspicuous and pressing. Artisanal mining, frequently the source of illegal gold, wreaks havoc on the environment. Miners resort to using hazardous chemicals such as mercury and cyanide to extract gold, polluting rivers, soil, and entire ecosystems in the process. Forests are razed, rivers are diverted, and once thriving landscapes are marred, leaving behind toxic wastelands. These environmental disasters transcend local boundaries, contributing to broader issues like climate change, biodiversity depletion, and desertification that impact the entire continent. The inhabitants of these mining zones often bear the brunt of the consequences. Communities are uprooted, water sources are contaminated, and age-old livelihoods are obliterated. For many, the land that once sustained them with food, water, and shelter now stands as a barren, poisonous expanse. This environmental devastation directly impinges on the health and well-being of these communities. The utilization of mercury in mining, for instance, can result in severe health complications, encompassing neurological impairments and birth abnormalities. Water source contamination can trigger disease transmission, exacerbating the public health crisis that numerous African nations already grapple with. The toll of the illicit gold trade transcends environmental devastation. This trade often thrives in regions where legal frameworks are feeble, consequently falling under the sway of armed factions, including terrorist groups and criminal syndicates. These entities leverage the proceeds from gold mining to finance their operations, stoking conflicts and perpetuating cycles of violence and turmoil. The illegal gold trade isn't solely an economic concern, It's a security matter that imperils the stability of entire regions. Equally dire is the economic impact of this exploitation. The substantial losses in tax revenue mean African governments have diminished resources to channel into vital services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. This perpetuates a cycle of impoverishment and underdevelopment, further entrenching Africa in the clutches of foreign exploitation. The dearth of investment in crucial infrastructure results in many African nations being unable to fully nurture their economies, rendering them reliant on foreign aid and investments. The illegal gold trade not only wreaks havoc on the environment and economy, but also tears at the social fabric of numerous communities. The infusion of wealth into these areas can breed social unrest, widening wealth gaps and fracturing communities. The presence of armed factions and the looming specter of violence further corrode trust and social unity, hindering communities from collaborating to enhance their circumstances. Consequently, the illegal gold trade not only dismantles the environment and economy, but also undermines the fundamental pillars of African society. The complicity of the West in this exploitation isn't just a moral lapse, it amounts to a crime against humanity. The rewards of Africa's gold are savored by individuals in distant lands, while the burdens fall upon those residing on the continent. This serves as a glaring illustration of how the global economic system is rigged against Africa, underscoring the paramount importance of the continent reclaiming its resources and leveraging them for the welfare of its people. The question arises, is there a means of breaking free from this pernicious cycle? The response is affirmative, albeit necessitating resolute action and a comprehensive reassessment of how Africa's resources are administered. The initial stride involves African nations seizing command of their gold production. This entails ceasing the exportation of raw gold and diverting resources into local refineries. By retaining the refining process within Africa, countries can capture a greater share of the value of their resources, foster employment opportunities, and invigorate local economies. Establishing local refineries goes beyond mere economics. It signifies the reclamation of sovereignty over Africa's resources. For too lengthy a span, the continent has been subject to the whims of external powers that dictate trade conditions. Through refining their gold, African nations can establish pricing, oversee the supply chain, and guarantee that a greater portion of the profits circulate within the continent. This marks a pivotal stride towards dismantling the cycle of reliance that has consigned Africa to a subservient stance in the global economy. Nonetheless, this marks solely the initiation. African nations must also collaborate to reevaluate international trade accords, ensuring they possess the authority to govern their resources. This entails confronting the West and rebuffing agreements that favor multinational enterprises at the cost of African populace. It additionally entails fortifying regional collaboration so that Africa can present a united front in global trade discussions. Entities such as the African Union hold a pivotal role in orchestrating these endeavors and guaranteeing that Africa articulates a unified stance on the global platform. Enhanced transparency and accountability in the gold trade are imperative. African governments must combat corruption and ensure that proceeds from gold mining benefit the populace at large, not merely a select few. This necessitates sturdy legal frameworks and effective institutions capable of upholding them. It also hinges on civil society's backing, which must hold governments and corporations answerable for their deeds. Initiatives like the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative can bolster transparency and guarantee that Africa's resource-generated wealth serves the public welfare. Alongside these internal endeavors, there is a call for a broader shift in global perceptions of Africa. The West must acknowledge Africa's vast potential instead of viewing it through a lens of charity. This entails discarding condescending narratives that depict Africa as a predicament to be resolved and instead acknowledging it as a partner with substantial contributions to offer the global economy. The exploitation of Africa's resources is not solely an African predicament. It's a global one necessitating a global remedy. Part of this resolution entails reforming the global financial system to render it fairer and more just. Western banks and financial institutions must be held accountable for their complicity in facilitating the illicit gold trade. This could entail stricter regulations, heightened oversight, and more severe penalties for individuals involved in or enabling unlawful practices. The global community must also take a firm stance against tax havens and other mechanisms allowing corporations to conceal profits and evade their fair tax contributions. By closing these loopholes, the world can ensure that a greater portion of Africa's riches remains on the continent, where it rightfully belongs. Moreover, there is an imperative for a novel global movement advocating for justice for Africa. This movement should unite activists, civil society entities, and governments worldwide to champion a more equitable distribution of global resources. It must challenge the entrenched power dynamics that have perpetuated Africa's dependency and insist on restructuring the global economy for the collective benefit rather than solely for the affluent and influential. This issue transcends mere equity. It is a fundamental matter of survival. If the world persists in exploiting Africa's resources, heedless of the repercussions, the entire planet will bear the consequences. The time has arrived for Africa to cease being viewed as the world's cash dispenser and to seize control of its destiny. While the West might have reaped from Africa's wealth across centuries, the authority to redefine the narrative lies within Africa's grasp. It is time to harness this authority and ensure that the forthcoming chapter in Africa's gold narrative embodies empowerment, prosperity, and justice. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to support the channel by liking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notifications bell so as to be notified once we share a new video.